Morning, you guys, and welcome to day 3 of how to convert with a workshop. So on day 1, we talked about the top reasons that your workshops are not converting. And the biggest answer was building trust. This is so important if you guys want to be able to convert from your workshops right away on the first one without having to nurture for 6 months or have them come back to your workshop 18 times. This is the key thing that we need to do. Then yesterday, we talked about 5 ways to actually build trust on your workshops. Okay, so we went through a whole bunch of different ideas. If you haven't watched that one yet, be sure to do that. But today, I want to talk about how you can use a signature workshop funnel to build your 6-figure business. Guys, if you're here live with me, jump in, say hello. Hey, Kathleen, awesome to see you. I want to talk about this because this was such a game changer for me. You know, of course, back in the day, I did all the things that I now tell people not to do. Clients all day long, one-to-ones all day long, trying all these different strategies to get people in, crossing my fingers, hoping that I would get referrals, all of that stuff. And what I realized is what I really needed to do was create this one signature funnel that I could use over and over and over again. The idea here is that we want to be able to actually refine the system. So some of the mistakes that coaches are making right now is they are trying all these different things. We're never refining anything. We're never repeating anything. And it can be very hard to figure out what's working and what's not if you only do things once. And there's some challenges with doing a workshop where people are creating them with tons of teaching, right? Over teaching, or they're just not creating them to sell, right? Because it's a different skill set. This is something new for most people. Most people have, done some workshops in their corporate lives or something like that, but they haven't actually created a workshop to sell. And so I want to talk about some of the main things that this did for me when I was finally able to create this one workshop funnel that I did every single, well, not every single week, but every 2 weeks for almost 3 years. And so the first one, of course, is having a system. Once the system was set up, I really didn't need to touch it again. All the emails were created, all of the automations were created, the opt-in thank you pages were created, everything was created. So all I really needed to do was refine. I didn't need to build brand new every single time. So I had this system. And the second part of that is that it was reliable. So I knew that every time that I ran this workshop, I knew how many people I needed in it. I knew how many people needed to show up live. I knew how many calls I needed to book in order to gain X number of clients, whatever that was. And so, there's all these different things that are going to be happening as a result of having this signature workshop. So 1, I had a system. 2, it was reliable. 3, I had the opportunity to refine, like I said, right? So this kind of goes into another one, but it's really data driven, right? So I knew exactly what was going on. I knew when enough people didn't show up. I knew when there weren't enough registrations. I knew when enough people didn't book calls or didn't show up to them or whatever it was. And so this gave me the opportunity to refine the way that we did things and not have to rebuild all the time. Then it also saved me tons and tons of work. So I would say that when you build out a funnel, especially if you're new to doing this type of thing, it might take you 5 or 10 hours a week to get this thing up and running. So once it was up and running, I no longer had to spend all that time working on creating. I didn't have to create new slides. I didn't have to create new scripting. I didn't have to create new opt-in thank you pages or emails or automations or checkouts, nothing. Everything was already done. And then, like I talked about before, we used all of the data that we had to decide what we were going to do next. So, a lot of the time you see dips or you see peaks, but you have to be able to identify what you actually need to change and what was maybe a one-off or something you don't really need to worry about. So there's all these sort of nuances to this, but I had hard data. So I had a really good idea of what was going on. And it was no longer like, ooh, the funnel's not working. It was more like, okay, I know exactly which piece of the funnel is not working. And from that, I was able to make the decision as to what to do next, right? The other thing that this did for me was it helped me to book 30% calls from the workshop. Now, the industry average was around 10 or is around 10 to 15%. That is the number that I learned when I was learning how to do workshops in the first place. And what I noticed is when I did the workshop the way that I do it with my new method, it actually converted 30% of the people on the call into calls. So people on the workshop, I should say, into one-to-one calls, which is obviously where I'm inviting them into my program. So instead of 10 or 15%, it was more like 30 or sometimes 35 or 40. So a lot of calls being booked in just 1 hour, right? So again, this is saving a ton of time because you're not having to spend your life in DMs all day. You're not having to run multiple workshops in order to get 5 or 10 or 20 calls booked, right? You're able to just get it all done in 1 hour. And then you book all those calls. And of course, you're gonna follow up them and make sure that you have that 80 or 90% show rate. And they're gonna be able to invite people into your programs. And when you do that, you're gonna be able to create revenue on a regular basis. And of course, if you use the pay for what you get signature revenue model that I teach, then you're gonna start to have reoccurring revenue all the time. And all of a sudden, instead of having a 10K month or a 5K month because you sold 2 people and they paid in full, and now you have no idea what's happening the next month, you're gonna start to have 10K months in a row. Because when you sign people up for your programs, let's say you're charging $500 a month. You sign up 2 people, now it's $1,000 a month that you're making, but for 6 months or 4 months, however long your program is, right? I usually recommend 4 to 6 months. So all of a sudden you're making $1,000. Then the next month you run the workshop again. I usually run mine every 2 weeks. You run the workshop again and you run it again twice in the month. And maybe you gain another 2 or 3 or 5 clients. And now you've added another $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. But it's every single month that it's coming in. It's not just this month I suddenly made 5K or 10K. It's, okay, it might be a little bit slower to get there. But when you get there and you hit that 10K mark or more, you are making that 10K for the next 6 months in a row. Okay. So this is the secret. This is how I hit 6 figures. This is how I did it without burning out, without the hustle, without doing hard sales, without any of that stuff. I've been working, I would say, about 24 hours a week or less. And it's all because I had this signature workshop model that I was able to use over and over and over again, which allowed me to stop spending all this time in content creation mode and allowed me to work on the business and not in it by having group coaching, right? And all of a sudden I'm running this 6-figure business working just 24 hours a week. Even a couple of years ago, I was traveling. I traveled to Europe and to Israel in, May, June time, 2023. And I traveled for 6 weeks and I didn't have to sell a single thing in order to make sure that I was still gonna bring in 8 to 10K over the next few months while I was traveling. And I was gone for about 6 weeks. And even though I did sell, I didn't have to because I had reoccurring revenue coming in and I was still able to deliver to my clients through the group coaching program. So if you guys want to hit this 6-figure mark and you wanna do it without the burnout and you wanna have fewer hours and you wanna be able to spend time with your family, your friends, for yourself, right? Whatever you want to be able to do, it's totally possible. And one of the best ways that you can do this is through a signature workshop funnel. So good news, I'm actually doing a 3-day, what I call the Trust First Conversion Method event in just a couple of weeks. It's going to start on Monday, July the 14th. I'm so excited for it because we're going to be taking what we talked about in these 3 days and we're going deep. We're gonna be going even deeper. I'm gonna be teaching even more about how this framework works. And you guys are gonna be able to get on, you're gonna be able to ask your questions and all of that good stuff. So if you guys want to come to that workshop, I want you to drop the word workshop below and I will send you a DM so that I can send you the invitation and the link and all of that good stuff, okay? So I hope that this was helpful as usual. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any questions, if you have any aha moments, pop them in the comments below. And if you want to come to that 3-day event on July the 14th, starting July the 14th, definitely drop the word workshop in the comments and I will send you a DM with all of the details, okay? Have an amazing day and we'll see you back next week.